Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 210. Don, I believe this episode will air on about March 3rd. We're recording a little bit early because both of us have been traveling and we're preparing for the annual first ever real world dealer meeting. So we got a busy week ahead of us, and I know there's a bunch of people looking forward to Chasing Giants bingo.
Yeah, I've been hearing about it everywhere I go. And I was in where was I at? I was in Missouri at a motel last week when we recorded, and I didn't get home until I was there through the weekend. Didn't get home until early this week, and then today I was on the road consulting on 3 different properties. The first time in all my consulting career that I did 3 properties in one day. But I probably ought to let people know that one of the properties was like 50 some acres, and then the other 2 were like in the 20s, and 2 of them were owned by the same client. They were just a few miles apart. And then on the way home, I was coming past another client that had signed up for a consulting visit and had enough time to stop in and do his as well. But that just means I've got 3 property plans to do now. So I got the kids all coming in for the weekend. Going to help out around the farm with some stuff, and my list of things is very long before Monday at the dealer meeting, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've all been preparing to host all of our dealer. Our dealer group has grown like crazy, and we're excited to get everybody in, including having Dr. Strickland in for some educational stuff, do a live podcast, and then get to see each other and also talk about what's new and what's going on with the company. I want to make sure everybody, before we get too far along, everybody's going out to the Real World website. One of the biggest questions we get is, what trade shows are we at? We're keeping that list updated on the Real World website. So if you want to see if there will be Real World or Don or I or a dealer at one of your local hunting shows, just go to that. That's always going to be updated for us. If we know about a trade show, it's going to be on there. So Don, talk a little bit about Missouri and your trip out there. And I think you picked up a something outside of Kansas City while you were on the trip.
Yeah, I did. The timing was just perfect. I think I mentioned last week that I looked at 6 properties on that trip. Actually, it was more than 6. I had one client that had 2 properties, but 6 different clients, and 5 of them were repeat clients. So pretty proud of that. The fact that so many people are calling, have me look at new properties. But while I was out there, I picked up my latest and greatest GMC pickup from Chris Yates, and as you can see, he gave me the Donald Trump Victory Chevrolet hat with the stars and the stripes. So only have about 600 miles on it. Drove it home and then drove it today on this consulting visit. It's the only 2 times I've been in it. Quite a bit different than the old truck. They really updated the electronics and everything. And one thing I'm going to have to talk to Chris about is I don't like the whole idea that you can't put the truck in gear until you've latched your seat belt. You can start it, but you're not going anywhere until you latch that seat belt. And for a farm guy that's driving around on the farm and hooking up to trailers, just imagine if you're trying to hook up to a trailer and you go back there and you need to back up another 3 inches, and then you got to come in there and you got to put your seat belt on before you can back up that 3 inches. I don't care for that, but you know me, I don't embrace technology, Terry, and they changed the buttons, so every time I get a new truck, the buttons are different. And shoot, I didn't even learn the last truck, and I get rid of it now. I got to start all over.
Yeah, I talked to you as you were driving, and you were having trouble with the Bluetooth and getting everything figured out after you picked it up.
Yeah.
The buttons are all in a different spot. Yeah, the 2000. What are these? I haven't gotten mine yet.
24s.
Yeah, these are 24s. The whole dash on the heavy duty is been upgraded, which it needed to be upgraded. But yeah, for a guy like you that would keep the same thing for 20 years without change, I think just takes us some getting used to.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they could have left things like they were in the early '80s. You want warmer air, you just pull it over to where it's red. You want colder air, you pull it over to where it's blue. You want the fan up high, you flip the lever up high. You want it low, you flip it down low. And all that is manual, hooked on some kind of cable behind the dash. We don't need this electronic stuff. Come on, we could just.
Yeah, but your cassette player would get all tangled up inside of the tape deck when it got too much spooled reeled out. Or were you 8-tracking it?
Yeah, I was. The 8-track was just a little bit before me. I got my license during that transition from the 8-track to the cassette. But these new trucks, you can't even put in a new stereo system. Remember the old days where you'd get the Kenwood or the Alpine radios, and it was so easy to tear the dash apart and unscrew the little nuts behind the knobs where you tuned it or did the volume, and slide that new one in there and plug in the wire and shoot, away you go. It just got way too fancy for this old guy.
I tell you what, though, to have a ton truck ride like those trucks do is unbelievable, though. I still say that out of all the vehicles I've ever had, a 3500 GMC Denali rides better than any vehicle I've ever owned.
They do ride good, no doubt about that.
So, anything takeaways as far as the consulting visits, though? You said you had 6 of them total. Did you see anything special or anything that stand out?
Well, we talked about a little bit last week that when a client buys a second property and has us come for a repeat visit, the second property is always better than the first. They learn what to look for. And, today what I seen is 2 of those 3 smaller properties. Well, actually, all 3 of them. I think you could kill a good buck. There's one property that had some neighbors sitting in line in multiple locations, which really, on a small property, that's a huge, huge deal. The other 2 did not have that, and I told the one guy, I said, his goal was to, shoot 150-inch bucks, and I said, you ought to be able to shoot 150-inch bucks every single year. You ought to have multiple 150-inch bucks on this property.
Right.
And he's going to do exactly what the plan is. So I'm kind of anxious to see what he comes up with, because his plan is, or his property is really close to the Illinois River. It's not right on the river, but it's out on the flat ag ground, a mile or 2 away.
Sure.
But you're still close enough that you got all that deer traffic. And really looking forward to seeing what he does on that small property. But, the size of the property is not near as important as how it lays out. And I would rather have the right 20 acres than the wrong 200. You can kill bigger bucks on the right 20 than you can on the wrong 200. And it's got nothing to do with the state it's in either. It's just how it lays out, and how it lays out, and what you can really affects what you can do with it.
Yeah. I had a situation with a consulting visit down in southern Kentucky, right on the Tennessee line. So I wouldn't call it West Virginia mountains, but it wasn't rolling Kentucky Central Hills. It had some steep topography to it. And as we were out talking about, the different strategy and plan that we were trying to think about on the visit, I said, man, if we could ever get access or buy that property to the north side of you, it would really change this property being able to access from that side, because it had road frontage up there also. And he sent me a text, I believe yesterday or the day before, and blindly approached the landowner from the property on the north and made an offer on it, and they accepted it. So we're
Awesome.
going to be revising that plan to include that. So I thought that was pretty cool. You never know until you ask, and he had the means and was able to put an offer in. So I'm really happy for him. It's going to really give him a lot of options for different wind directions and being able to hunt a couple more locations on that farm.
Yeah, I met with some great guys today, a couple of them, and they're both clients that work together. The one has been a client. I looked at his second property earlier this year, and getting to know these guys pretty well. And the more you get to know somebody, the deeper the conversations go. And we're talking about things, and I'm opening up a little bit, and they noted that there's plenty of things that don't get shared on social media and the podcast. There's just things that we can't tell, or there's people out there that are always looking to take advantage of a situation when it comes to hunting big deer. So these clients are privileged to hear some things that the general public doesn't get to hear.
Yeah, we have to protect the investment of our customers a little bit too.
Right.
The neighbors don't need to know everything we're doing on the property either, because they would just figure out a way to take advantage of it.
Well, when I talk about clients, I almost never mention the name, especially if I'm talking about their property,
right,
or the situation. Now, I may say something about if they did something extremely nice to me, or
Sure.
which happens all the time. You're baking me a cherry pie or something like that. I'll try to acknowledge that the best I can, but it's not my place to be revealing to the world what a client's doing on his property.
Yeah, I agree. And we don't want to monopolize that anyway. That's their home and their piece and their investment, so we want to respect that. So
Right.
We're going to take a quick break and listen to a spot from ASIO, the sponsors of the show. Make sure you're following Mission Whitetail Podcast. Joe's got a lot cooking. We got a lot cooking, and excited to bring you some news later this year of how ASIO is going to really change the game of the hunting industry. So we're glad to be part of it. Glad to call Joe a friend. But let's listen to that, and then we're going to come back with some speaking engagements. And I want to leave a lot of time for questions this week, because we have Bush Honeysuckle questions, and I know a lot of people are out doing TSI work and habitat work right now, so I want to spend a lot of time talking about invasives and Bush Honeysuckle. So we'll be right back.
ASIO Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics, give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. ASIO has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit asiogear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
Okay, Dom, well, I'm going to put a screen up real quick that's going to talk about 2 different opportunities to come out and see you. Why don't you go over those, and then we'll get on to questions.
Yeah, I might throw out there, too, that you mentioned Joe Miles' podcast, Mission Whitetail. Well, I actually was on that today, did a recording while I was driving between the 2 consulting visits, and Joe had interviewed, I think, 6 different hunters about scent control, and I happen to be one of those 6. So everybody needs to tune into that Mission Whitetail podcast. I'm not sure when that particular one's coming out, but it ought to be good. I know he interviewed myself, Andre DeQuisto, and he told me a couple more, but I don't remember who they were. Actually,
I have some differences of opinion with that many guys, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he said, I think I was like the 3rd or 4th guy that he'd interviewed, and every person had been different so far, and I promise you I was different than all of them with what I had to say about it. But
we usually are.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the speaking engagements. So March 9th on Saturday, it'd be the Saturday after the dealer event, I'm going to drive all the way out to Greenwood, Delaware for the Whitetail Summit for our distributor on the East Coast, Eastern Outdoors, and Dr. Bronson Strickland is going to be there as well. I know Andy Andreas, the apple breeder, who's working with Jay Gingrich, he's going to be speaking, and I think they got a couple more as well. So several speakers, good meal. If you're out on the East Coast, you ought to try to make that event. If you want to RSVP or have questions, call 720-648-0067. And then on my trip home, I actually got to do some consulting out that way. One in Maryland, my first property ever in Maryland, and then New York and Pennsylvania. But on my way home, the evening of March 13th, I'm going to be speaking at Fredonia, Pennsylvania, at a dealer event. One thing I'll throw out is this dealer event, it's going to have several speakers as well. Andy's going to be at that one, but they've also got some other guys, and they're going to have hourly, they call them hot sales. So like if you're there for 1 hour, they're going to have really, I guess, smoking hot deals on different products. And they told me that one of them is going to be real world soybeans. You can go to that, not only save money on shipping, but save money on products. So just give John Allen Byler a call at 724-475-1111, and he can fill you in on the details.
Yep. And again, if you're looking for trade shows, go to realworldwildlifeproducts.com. Brand new website, a lot of resources. We got some new product videos that are going up on each of the pages that'll be up and going live soon. So Steve Shields, our friend there, has been working hard on getting us some more collateral to not only educate people on how to use the product, but why it's different. So a lot of good information out there if you want to go check it out. You ready to jump into questions, or you got anything else to talk about tonight?
Well, I'm ready to jump in. If we may get sidetracked before we get off of here, but
it usually happens. We'll see where we go.
Yeah, so the first one comes from Brandon McDaniel from Winchester, Kentucky. Says, Don, I have a 95-acre farm that is 50% crop, 25% hay, and about 25% woods. My biggest chunk of woods is about 20 acres and made up of mostly junk timber with very few oaks, some hickory, and walnut. The area is overtaken with bush honeysuckle and locust. It's so thick, most of it is almost impossible to walk through, especially in the summer and fall. I assume it's mostly too thick for the deer as well. I know you talk a lot about TSI, but I haven't heard you discuss much on what to do with a wooded area overtaken by bush honeysuckle or something similar. I'm a little intimidated by it and don't know where to start. Is a timber harvest in there and a dozer my only option? Thanks for your feedback. Love the show. Well, I'll throw out that on the questions this week, I went back on some that had been submitted some time back. I'm trying to get things that are relevant to right now because I know we got a lot of guys out doing habitat projects, and we'll have for the next couple of months or so until things really green up and warm up. We have talked about, how to deal with bush honeysuckle and things in the past, but we got a lot of new listeners as well. So I wanted to throw this back out for those folks who are fairly new to listening to the podcast. So bush honeysuckle is a problem throughout much of the country. I know it's really bad here in the Midwest in some areas, and I understand exactly, what this listener is describing. I've seen it firsthand, and I've said that I think trying to wage battle with this stuff is a battle that you will fight your entire life, and you'll never win. It's a battle that never ends, and it's a battle that you will never win. So you got to just kind of make the most of it. And the best approach that I've found, I do have one permission property owned by a friend of mine that I can go in and kind of, for the most part, kind of do what I want. And what I've done on that property is I go in this time of the year with a chainsaw, and I cut that bush honeysuckle down at the ground, kick the stuff to the side, and I create paths through the stuff for the deer to follow. I'll spray the stumps with a mixture of Garlon 4 Ultra It's a herbicide, Garlon 4 Ultra and diesel fuel. Use 1 part Garlon 4 Ultra and 4 parts diesel fuel. Put it in a little, pump up garden sprayer and spray those stumps. Cut them off, then spray them, and then they won't come back. But kick them to the side, and you don't need to make a path big enough to drive a truck down. Just make it big enough that you could walk through there and not have to bend over and fight every step of the way. And by doing that, and bring these paths right past your tree stands, and you'll get those deer following this stuff. They don't want to fight that stuff any more than we do. But by cutting these paths, and you got to go in and you got to redo it every few years because that stuff will just take over every open space. But it's not that hard to do, especially once you've done it once and you've got the deer that are starting to travel it. You just go in every few years and keep it open. But, you can lead the deer in a thicket that might not have terrain features and where the deer, like a flatwoods, for example, where there's no reason for the deer to walk 20 yards in front of your stand instead of 50 yards in front of your stand. Well, by creating these paths, you're actually creating features that the deer will follow, and you can bring them right past your stand, right within range. And that's how you take a bad situation and make the most of it. It's also how you take a good stand location and you make it a great stand location. And I talk about that a lot with my consulting clients. A lot of guys, they want to look at what the property has to offer or the sign on a property. And oh my, there's a beat down path here and there's big rubs along it. I've got to get a stand in here. Well, no, you don't. If it's a good spot, yeah, absolutely. But a lot of times it's not the best spot for a stand because it doesn't have good access to get there, or you can't hunt the wind there. Maybe it's down on the bottom or something where the wind swirls. You can dictate how the deer move on a property, and that's basically what we're doing when we're consulting, is we're putting plans together to bring the deer traffic past locations where we can hunt to our advantage. And the deer thinks it's still to their advantage. For instance, in this situation, a mature buck, he's still in that thick cover. We're not creating a wide path, like I said. We don't need to drive a truck down it. But we're making it a little bit easier for him to get that big rack, through this thick cover. And we can lead him right where we want him. We can put those target animals right in front of our stands. And a lot of times I'll pick the tree out for my stand, and then I start building around that tree. Mm-hmm. I don't go look for the sign and then look for the tree. I look for the tree, and then I bring the deer to that tree. And that tree is based, again, on access and wind direction. So The Bush Honeysuckle, as bad as it does give us an opportunity to influence deer travel patterns across the property by cutting these paths.
Yeah, I have to cut a lot. I will tell you one little tip or trick that I learned after back surgery when I couldn't get down with a chainsaw and bend over like I used to be able to, is I bought one of those Milwaukee M18 battery pole saws and only put one section in it, so it's really light and it's balanced. It's almost the length of a weed eater. And when you're trying to cut a path in cedars or, bush honeysuckle or even autumn olive, you can go in there and just reach up underneath of one and not be slapped in the face as it's falling over and fighting that stuff. You can just zip it off at the ground because you're back away from it. So if you're trying to cut a path in cedars or whatever, get you one of those little pole saws and only put one section in it, and it will change your life almost as much as Seprotec underwear. It's life changing.
Well, I don't know anything about your special underwear, Terry, but another thing that you can do is if you've got a skid loader with one of them forestry heads on it, you can use that to cut your path through it, and then come back once the path is created. Then come back with your sprayer and just spray those little stumps that are left behind. That's typically a little bit wider than I would want to have the path, but it'll grow in a hurry. So create the path, spray the stumps, get out, stay out, and those deer will follow it.
Hey, and I know somebody who sells those skid loaders with mulching heads.
Let me guess, Cornerstone Equipment, 5 locations in Kentucky. See your representative, Terry Peer, after the show.
Hey, funny thing is, FAE sponsored the Midwest Sportsman Classic,
Yep.
and they're actually coming to the shop tomorrow to meet with us as a result of that trade show. So we got to make sure we got to thank the folks that put on that trade show. They're going to end up having another dealer with us because they sponsored that hunting show that we would have the Legends Roundtable from. So
Awesome.
small world when you start connecting the dots like that.
I know one of the guys that is with FAE, one of the regional sales reps, so maybe you're
Yeah.
going to meet with him.
Maybe. All right, we'll put the second question up.
This one comes from Mike Reams from Williamsfield, Ohio. It says, the farm I hunt has a few small areas that are not being used for crops, and there is an old gas line that is no longer maintained. The areas I'm describing are anywhere from 1/10 of an acre to 1/4 of an acre. There are ag fields all around, but come late season the fields are picked. There isn't many deer to be found. Is it worthwhile to plant those smaller areas for late season? If you think it is worth my time to plant them, what would you suggest? Thank you guys. I've learned a ton in the short time I've been following. Well, Mike, the difference between a deer killer and a deer hunter is a deer hunter cares about the resource outside of hunting season. Always wants to be a conservationist and a good steward of the resource, and I can tell that you've got that interest. You're looking to provide food when the deer need it the most late in the year, and absolutely you can make a difference with a food source even on small acreage. I'd suggest in those type of areas, deadly dozen is probably going to be your best bet. But the benefit for you is that it's going to be good during the entire season. So, it's going to be a plot that you could hunt over on opening weekend when the deer are hitting some of those cereal grains and probably the Austrian winter peas, the sugar beets, things like that. But yet, come late season, there's still going to be the turnips and radish and things like that available as well. So, also a good plot in the spring for turkey hunting. That deadly dozen plot will green right back up in the spring, and boom, you got a turkey spot as well. But another thing I'll throw out is you're talking about some really small plots here. With a little bit of work, you can probably expand those just a little bit and maybe turn that 1/4 acre into a 1/2 acre, or that 1/10 of an acre into a 1/4 acre. And it's definitely worth the effort, in my opinion.
Even if you don't cut it back far enough to plant where that stump was, getting rid of that canopy, that just one row of trees around the outside lets you plant further closer in to get more sunlight in for your food plot to survive, and you're not dealing with those tree roots underneath as competition.
Right.
The thing that we see the most, I don't know, maybe you don't, but that I've seen here recently is when guys are planting small plots below 1/4 of an acre, they just can't help themselves. They'll buy a 1/4 acre bag of Deadly or Dixie Dozen, and they think the more seed, the better. And they'll have a 1/10 acre or a small plot, and they put the whole bag on it. And there's just some products that you can't plant thick. And some you can get away with, like clover, you can put as much down as you want. But, those products have to have room to develop, and overplanting them is bad news.
Yeah, there's certain seed mixes that you can overseed. No matter how much you put down, it's not going to hurt you, like clover and a clover mix. But there's others that is absolutely detrimental. You start, I think most deer hunters have probably seen a plot of like turnips where the turnips were seeded too close or too heavy, and you got all these little turnip plants that are a couple inches apart, and none of them have space to put a bulb on, so they don't even really have a bulb. You got these little, and they don't even look healthy. They got like purple leaves, and they're about 6 inches tall, and they're really crowded. And that's an example of putting too much seed down and it being detrimental to the crop. Switchgrass is the same way. You plant switchgrass too heavy, and it'll stun its growth. It needs some room to fill out and form big clumps. And In fact, I just took a call today from a real world customer that he was wanting to know seeding rates because there was so much misinformation on the internet. He was saying, I see you guys recommend 4 to 5 pounds an acre, but yet I see other people recommending anywhere from 8 to 12 pounds an acre. Why are you guys recommending so much less? And I explained to him, just like with the turnips, you don't want to, more is not better in some cases. And switchgrass is one of those, Deadly Dozen, Plot Topper, or a couple others. And talking about switchgrass, I'll throw this out there just for the listeners, is that there is a good chance Real World's going to sell out of switchgrass this year. So if you need, and our dealers too, if you want some switchgrass in the inventory, if you're planting switchgrass, you probably better order because there's a good chance we're going to sell out.
The one disadvantage of us only selling fresh seed, we're dependent on what the harvest is that year. So some years we have more than others, but we're not going to compromise the quality of the seed or leftover seed if it's poor germ. So one disadvantage of how we do it, it does cost us business by trying to do it the right way.
Well, there's only one way to do business. That's treat people the way we want to be treated.
That's right.
We want to sell them the best and treat them the best we can.
All right, we're moving through these pretty quick. Put the third one up here.
Now, this one comes from Sam Lowe from Gray, Georgia. It says, Dear Don and Terry, thank you for all your helpful information and spreading the word to others. I wanted to start off this question by saying, Don, I've had your daughter and family in my prayers, and I hope God will send your family a blessing to come with her road through cancer. My buddy just told me about a product of liquid lime. I don't know the brand name off the top of my head, but I was wondering if you or Terry have ever used any kind of liquid lime, and does it work? From what I have been told, it works quicker than ag or pelletized lime. Just wanting to know your thoughts on this. Again, I hope the best for you and your family. God bless, Sam Lowe. Sam, I have used liquid lime, and it is an extremely poor substitute for the real stuff. In fact, I could not even tell I applied the liquid lime. I applied it on a clover plot and a couple of different times in one season a couple of years ago as I was trying out a new product, and in my opinion, it was a waste of my time and money. I would go with the real deal. There really is no substitute. I will use the opportunity to plug a new Real World product. I don't even think it's on the website yet. We just got inventory in. Yeah, we just got inventory in the last day or so. It's called pH Balancer, and that pH Balancer has a number of different ingredients to address the the pH of the soil, just as lime would. And the way I'm going to use that product, I've got a couple of different situations on my farm where I'm going to use it. First of all, I've got some clover fire breaks, and in one situation on my farm, those clover fire breaks run right along a row of pine trees, and the needles off those pine trees, fall out there into that clover, and that actually changes the pH of the soil. It makes it more acidic, and I've got to continually add lime along that strip of clover, or it just dies out, really, and very poor stand. And I've been able to, in the past year, really get that to flourish like never before by adding some lime. And that's one situation where this new pH Balancer fertilizer product, we're actually introducing 3 new fertilizer products that are different than anything that's out there on the market. It's all granular stuff. None of it's liquid. So you would broadcast it. But then I've got another spot on my farm where I tore out some pine trees about a year ago, and actually I turned it into cattle pasture. But when I seeded that pasture where those pine trees had stood for a number of years, the grass is just not near as good. It's because of the pH. So I'm going to go in with that pH Balancer and apply some of that in that location, and get the pH of that soil back up to where it needs to be. But the liquid lime products, in my opinion, it's not worth wasting your money on.
When things are marketed as a shortcut, they're most likely a shortcut, and they're not as good. I mean, if that was the case, all the farmers would be spraying lime out of their 132-foot boom sprayer. And some might be, I don't know. But
I would say it's very limited that the farmers are doing that. And you're great point, Terry. Most of the time, a shortcut is a shortcut to your pocketbook.
Elevate your hunt with Breton USA's modern AR rifles, where each feature is engineered with precision for the hunter's advantage. Our exclusive Breton Hunt Spec 3-prong approach offers a seamless blend of form and function, transforming the AR rifle into a masterpiece of hunting engineering. With features like marble coat camo and our patent-pending receiver lock, every Breton rifle is a beacon of innovation. Achieve unparalleled balance, durability, and accuracy in even the most challenging conditions. Make every shot count with a rifle built on a legacy of hunting mastery. Head over to BretonUSA.com to transform the way you hunt.
here we go.
All right, the next one is from Lonnie Bontrager from Bennington, Indiana. Says, hello, Don and Terry. I enjoy your podcast. I love your simple and practical advice for big bucks. My question is concerning the world-class buck that was shot in Ohio this past fall by a young hunter. This buck is known as the Alexander buck. By all appearances, it seems like he took the buck totally legal, but now the Ohio DNR has confiscated the rack without any evidence of wrongdoing, all because of jealous people giving false reports, etc. I'm convinced if that was a 120-inch deer, nobody would have said anything. Why is a person guilty until proven innocent in a case like this? I believe it to be government overreach. There's a bigger chance of that happening to someone that listens to this podcast, especially if they follow your advice. I think it would be good if you could expound on this, Don, as you had a similar experience with your first really big buck. If any one of us should happen to kill a world-class deer, what advice would you have for us? Is there steps we can take right after the kill to ensure the public that it's totally legitimate? Or would people spread rumors and gossip regardless? Keep up the great work and God bless. Lonnie, totally familiar with the buck you're speaking of in Ohio. I don't know the details, so I'm not going to even really comment on that. I'll just leave it at that. I just don't. I don't know guilt or innocence or anything like that, so I'm not going to assume one way or the other. Just not going to touch that subject. But you mentioned the situation that I went through, and actually I went through it exactly 20 years ago in 2004, and from that point forward, I have carried a video camera on every hunt, and I have not got every buck kill on video, but I've got every recovery on video. And today, if a hunter would shoot a world-class buck, well, first of all, most of the time you're going to know about a world-class buck before you kill him. Somebody in the area is going to have a picture of him on their trail camera. You may have pictures of him on your trail camera. It is going to be almost unheard of today to shoot a world-class buck and never know he existed until he walked by your stand. So the point of that is you've got a chance to prepare yourself for that event. Carry a video camera. I mean, even your phone. You may not be able to get the recovery or the shot rather on a video camera. It might all happen too quick. The buck comes in, you ain't got time to mess with the camera. All you got time is to grab your bow and take the shot. But as soon as that shot is over, you can grab your cell phone. You can make a video of yourself, and the date and time is going to be recorded on that video as you store it on your phone. You can say, hey, I'm hunting at such and such location. I just shot this giant buck. It's whatever time of the day it is, and give the details. And then when you go to recover, keep that cell phone video rolling as you recover. it's sad that we've got to do that. We've got to cover our butts, even if you're 100% legal and honest and ethical. The whole deal about government overreach, that's when it comes to this situation that we're talking about here, I've got mixed feelings about it because, to be honest, I think most game wardens or CPOs are great, honest, law-abiding people. They treat others with respect, the way they would want to be treated. They're not a bunch of rogue government agents out trying to make victims of innocent people. And sometimes I think they get that bad rap, and that describes a very, very, very small percentage of them. Most of them are great people, and as such, they have an extremely difficult job to do. If you think about it, how difficult is it to really catch a person breaking a game law? I mean, literally, probably less than 1% of game law violations are ever caught. Probably far less than 1% ever get caught. So, these folks are out there, working for the benefit of law-abiding hunters. They're working for the good of the game populations that they're trying to protect. They're part of that stewardship team, really, that looks out for the resource. And I don't like seeing the whole group lumped together. And in the past, I've probably been as guilty as anybody, but I don't like seeing them all lumped together where one bad apple, gives them all a bad name. On the other hand, I know there are situations where the rules are changed or twisted based on the size of the buck in question, like you mentioned here, or based on the person in question. So a bigger name in the hunting industry is going to have a bigger target on his back than the general public. The bigger the buck is that a hunter shoots, the bigger the target becomes on his back. So there's a lot of factors at play there. I just, at the beginning of this question, or my answer to this question, I did not comment on that Ohio buck because it's something that I just don't have the facts on. Yeah, there's a lot of stories out there, but I wasn't there. I was not, privileged to the law enforcement investigation or anything like that. So I didn't want to comment. And at the same time, it's really easy to throw a hunter under the bus when he shoots a giant buck, but it's also easy to throw the conservation officer or the game warden under the bus when many times he's doing his job and he's doing it legitimately and he's doing it for the good of all of us law-abiding hunters.
I had a mentor of mine early in my career say never operate under hearsay, speculation, or opinion. So in this case, I think that's probably the best case for us. I mean, we get asked quite a bit on social media what we think about the situation, and honestly, I have no idea. I don't really know any facts, so I'm sure if there's a reason for it, it'll all get worked out one way or another. But at the end of the day, there was a world-class deer killed, and I hope for the sake of the hunter and the other people that pursued the animal. A deer like that was being hunted by more than one person. The bad ending of this story would be that somebody did do something unethical or illegal while there were people trying to chase it fair chase. So that would be the bad ending to the story, is if a world-class deer like that was killed that way. But who knows?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I kind of got on a rant there, and I'm not sure I really answered his question. What can we do to prevent it? I think you carry the video camera, and that's it. You get witnesses, and even at that, I've got a video camera with me on every hunt. Like I said, I've got a video camera with me on every recovery. and I still get accusations thrown at me right and left. And the haters are going to come at you no matter what, the jealous people. I used to get accused of, poaching deer at night, trespassing, whatever. Well, today I don't get those accusations so much because I can disprove them. I've got the video proof. You want to say I shot this deer at night? Okay, explain this video. Here it is. That obviously wasn't at night. Or you're trespassing. Okay, here's the video. I can take you right to the spot where that videotape was filmed. I obviously was not trespassing. So then they just go a different direction, and they say you're turning deer loose or whatever. There's always going to be those haters. So you just do what you can, surround yourself with good people. And I want to go back to the situation that he mentions with my first 200-inch buck and the situation I dealt with there, because we got some time here on this. I think we only got one or two more questions left. So we got some time here. Back in 2004, I shot that deer, and at that time, I was heavily involved with the Illinois Bowhunter Society, a group that was fighting with the IDNR on a lot of regulation changes. We was seeing the Illinois deer herd being mismanaged, I guess is the best term, and I was extremely vocal at that time online about the job that DNR was doing. And it just so happened that the DNR got a complaint after I shot that buck. And even though I took the CPO to the location and showed him exactly how it went down, where my tree stand was at, we met with the landowner, the whole 9 yards, even though that CPO flat out told me, I believe what you're saying because the evidence was here to support it. That was his exact words, quote, I believe what you're saying because the evidence is here to support it, unquote. And even though that happened, when we got back to the vehicles, he gets on his cell phone with someone in Springfield, and I couldn't hear the conversation because I was not in the vehicle, but I know when he came out of that vehicle, it was a different story. Then all of a sudden, it didn't matter that the evidence was there to support what I was telling him. They were going to take my buck and force me to go to court and fight for it, which I did, and I got it back. But there are situations where you're almost forced to play by a different set of rules based on who you are. So, I've made it very clear that I'm going to do everything legal in terms of pursuing basically everything in life, but especially pursuing these deer because I know I have a big target on my back. I work with my local CPO when I can. I've given them tips on different things that have gone on. I've given permission to set up on my property and set up those robo deer. Not only that, I've gave them permission to hide their vehicles at night inside my shed where they can look out the windows and observe what's going on with these robo deer. I support them all I can as they try to bring these basically poachers to justice because it's a very, very, very difficult job. I'm telling you, for every deer that gets shot illegally, there's not 1 in 100 that gets prosecuted. And so it's up to us honest deer hunters to help our local law enforcement out. I mean, if you hear some story wherever it may be, down to local sporting goods store or whatever, do you just blow it off or do you have the guts to get involved? And the thing that I think a lot of local people don't care about me is the fact that I'm willing to get involved. I'm willing to stand up and say, that's wrong. These guys are doing this. You need to do something about it. There's a local group that to this day cannot stand me because 25 years ago, even before that 200-inch buck incident, they broke the law. They got caught. And I called the state's attorney and I said, hey, let's do something about this. This has been going on for way too long. And I become the bad guy. I wasn't involved whatsoever, but I become the bad guy because I'm trying to look out for local law-abiding deer hunters. And to this day, 25 years later, some of this group still hates me. And I've heard stories in the last 6 months where my name has come up in conversation with one of these guys in particular, and he went on an absolute tirade, all because 25 years ago he broke the law, and I had the guts to stand up and say, let's do something about this, let's stop it. So, you know,
That's how our society is, though, and that's why good, honest people, that's why Christians, that's why people get so hesitant about speaking up anymore, is because of the persecution that you take when you do it. Look at the disciples in the New Testament. They were asked to go and spread the gospel, and look what happened to them. They all got killed. That's what it means to be standing up for what you believe in. And luckily, we're in a country where we're not persecuted for our religious beliefs like they were. But it's no different. I mean, we stand up against the whatever gay pride, rainbow carrying stuff that goes on, and we're considered the bad people at that point because we're standing up for our values. And it just, when you try to go and do the right thing and stand up for what you believe in, there's always going to be people that hate on you, and most of the time it's the people that are crooked that begin with.
Well, and to go back to that situation, that was 20-some years ago. To me, it's water under the bridge. I can deal with those folks today and treat them, as respectfully as anyone else. And most of them that were involved in that situation have shown me the same respect. There's just one or two that's been ridiculous. If that's the worst thing they ever do in their life is shoot a deer illegally, they're probably doing pretty good. I mean, what's Jesus say that he is who without sin cast the first stone? And I'm not casting stones. I'm just saying that, if we want to change our society, if we want to change the deer hunting world, it's up to us. It's not up to someone else. You got a situation like this buck in Ohio, it's up to us.
All right, well, you're taking a drink there. We'll get the last question put up on the screen.
All right, see if I can get through this without having a coughing fit. Eli Doyle from Lewistown, Illinois says, Don, I listen to the podcast weekly and I'm very intrigued by this Nutri-Crave corn. I've got a few questions coming from the farmer side of me. If this corn has this many nutrients in it, I'd be interested in your opinion on using it for silage corn for our feeder cattle. Also curious on the stalk nutrients versus ag corn stalks. The last question is the price point per bag versus seed corn. If the price is comparable and the stalks and corn itself is so much more nutritional, I wouldn't hesitate to plant versus traditional corn, and I'm sure many others would if they were introduced to this product. Thank you guys for a great podcast, and God bless. Well, Eli, we actually do have people growing this for livestock feed. In fact, that's another product that we're probably going to sell out of this year is the Nutri-Crave corn. This year we do have two different maturities. We got 112 day and 100 day, so it ought to do better in the north. Just being brutally honest, I talked to a who was it? It was actually a distributor of ours up north about some Nutri-Crave this year that the deer didn't seem to hit as hard as they did a year ago. And the situation was, I'm certain of it, is that corn had not had a chance to fully mature before frost hit and killed it. And that corn, the experience that we've had is that corn really builds up nutrients as it's drying down. And I don't know if it's pulling those nutrients out of the stalk or what's happening. But I know if you go out and you do a grain sample before that corn is totally dried down on the stalk, it won't be near as good as if you wait until it is totally dried down on the stalk and the nutrient quality just comes up. So I can't really speak to the whole silage thing because I just don't have any tests. We haven't done any analysis on silage to know what difference that makes. It would be a good test for somebody to do. I do know that we've got a lot of livestock people buying this seed corn now with the idea they're going to feed it, especially to hogs and poultry. That seems to be where the biggest benefit is for hogs and poultry. So if that really pans out, I expect this corn to really take off in the coming years, and we'll have to grow a whole lot more seed. But at the dealer event that's coming up, there's going to be a discussion just about this corn. And I'm not going to be the one. I'll be a part of it, but I'm not going to be the expert on the stage for that topic by any means. But the idea that this corn can be bought elsewhere is totally false. Real World owns the rights to this corn from the breeder that created it. Nobody else can buy it from that breeder, and it's also a work in progress. I can tell you that we actually grew some seed corn in Mexico this winter because we can get an extra crop. During the winter months here in the United States, we can't grow a crop, but down in Mexico they can. So to gain a year of genetic improvement, we had some seed grown down in Mexico for us this winter, and it's not a finished product. It's way better than typical ag corn, without a doubt, as far as nutrient content. But we're not done perfecting this corn yet. We've got our breeder working on making it better and better. And as that happens, we'll keep you informed of why next year's corn or this year's corn is better than last year's corn. The project we had for this year was to take that 108, 109-day corn and make it a shorter season corn for our northern people so they can have nutrient-dense corn up there that has a chance to fully mature. And at the same time, we extended it just a little bit for southern regions as well. So we've got some things we're working on in the future with that corn as well. We want to continue to push the limits on the protein and fat levels in this corn, and we've got our breeder working on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone right now. Just last night, we got a customer of ours that got samples pulled on February 13th and tested on February 23rd to send us examples of what his test results were of ag corn versus Nutri-Crave. So, all this data that we're collecting, we're not done with it. It took us a lot of years to get Gen 2 soybeans to what it is today. We would tweak those things to make them better all the time. We're never done with what we're doing. So, we're excited to be able to share and grow all that as we go. It's a fun project for sure.
Mm-hmm. But the livestock industry has taken notice of what we've done with this corn, and a fair percentage of the corn we sell this year will not be going to deer plots. It will be going to livestock feed.
Yeah, and the whole premise there is to keep the ration costs down because you're getting so much protein out of the commodity, which is the corn. So the more protein you can get out of that, the less other inputs you have to get your protein for your food ration up to where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, boss. Well, we're gonna be in Central Illinois here in just a couple days and recording the live podcast. It'll air next Sunday. So we want to hope everybody enjoys that. I think everybody's going to get a kick out of this experience for sure. So it'll be a first for us. I don't know that I don't know that we're going to see the bingo cards beforehand. So I think it's just going to be us talking like normal. and they're playing. So I don't think they're actually going to show us the cards, but
Well, there is a big poster banner that was made that has all these phrases that are on the card. So I don't know how many phrases are going to be on a particular each individual card, but there is way more phrases on this poster. And I can tell you that Tee It Up and Purple Haired Freaks are a couple of them.
garbage.
That garbage is there.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing all of our dealers. This is the first time that we've brought everybody in for this type of thing. This is the time of year that all of our dealers are picking up and getting their product shipped to them. So we tried to coordinate it all. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to this podcast that'll air next week. We appreciate everybody's support, and we'll be back with you next week live in front of a big audience. It should be fun.
Yeah, it will. Hope to see a lot of you there at that dealer event.
All right. Take care, everyone.
God bless. See you next week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.